Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I'll be talking about A License to Steal by Benjamin J. Stein. The Untold Story of Michael Milken and Conspiracy to Bilk the Nation. This was published in 1992. It's not super long. My copy is signed. It was signed in 1993. How long is this? Just over 200 pages. And this book really covers Michael Milken and junk bonds, the junk bond kind of buying craze of the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, mostly 80s though. This is not the first book that I've read on this subject, but the main focus in this book was about the risk of the bonds, the junk bonds, and how that risk was conveyed to the buyers of those bonds and what those junk bonds were used for. I'll kind of explain a little bit about what bonds are. Bonds are a form of debt. And if you were a company and you needed to raise money right now, you'd kind of take out a loan. If you're taking out a loan from investors, that's in the form of a bond. Let's say it's $100, and I say I want $100 right now. And people buy $100 worth of bonds. I've just raised $100, and those people have a promise from me that in the future I will pay them back with interest. And that interest basically represents the risk that they're taking in giving me the money now, with the idea that money now is more of a guarantee, obviously, than money in the future. So the riskier that bond is, the more that I have to be willing to pay people to trust me. A higher interest rate. With junk bonds, you would basically have to pay a lot more for people to hold your bonds, for people to be willing to give you money. And in this example, two things were happening. Companies were saying that these bonds were worth more or were rated higher, were better bonds, investment grade bonds, basically. So they didn't have to pay as much interest. And this means that they were able to hold on to more of the money, raise more money, and keep more money because they might have to pay it back. Now, the question is, if they were really risky, wouldn't they default on some of those bonds? And that could happen, but that would happen in the future. So in the present, they would get the money, and then they might roll something else over, might pay it off with other bonds. Ben Stein says that it's basically a Ponzi scheme, what they were doing. And what Michael Milken was doing, as described by Benjamin Stein, was providing a group of people who would buy each other's bonds to help make it appear that there was a kind of a liquid market in these bonds, and that if you bought bonds and you ever wanted to sell them or unload them, you would be able to do that. For some people, it didn't matter because they had the money. But for others, there might be restrictions on what kind of investments they can make. And by having something rated higher and something that was safer, they might be able to invest in it, where their policies and the protections they had for their investors as fiduciaries, they wouldn't be able to invest in a junk bond. That's mostly what Ben Stein's focusing on in this book. It's not really, there's a lot of other stuff in this story that I've read about in the past that talks about insider trading, and it talks about leveraged buyouts and kind of the fall of Michael Milken. That's those books that I've read, Predator's Ball and Den of Thieves and some others. Those cover a lot of other areas, but really what Ben Stein's doing this is talking about, how risky these bonds really were and how they were touted as being less risky. When I started reading business books, I really started with two pretty important, maybe three. One was about Enron. And the other two, one was about the leveraged buyout of RJR Nabisco, and that one's called Barbarians at the Gates. And then the other one was Den of Thieves, which is about Drexel Burnham Lambert and Michael Milken. So those are some of the first ones I read. And I remember I was working at a place reading this book, and I kept seeing stuff about parking violations. And at that point, I thought parking violations were like your car is parked in the wrong place and you're getting tickets for your car. And I was like, why is this book so focused on parking violations? Well, it turns out parking violations are more about moving chunks of stock that you own somewhere else, so it looks like you hold a different amount or you haven't triggered certain requirements. So it's not really you're parking your car, you're parking stock somewhere, or bonds. What was interesting is where I was working, I started talking to this lawyer we had, and I was like, hey, you should read this book. This is a really good book. And I found, this was years ago, I found out that her father-in-law was the chief of staff with Michael Milken. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What are the chances that I'm reading a book from the late 80s that your father-in-law was a part of? Huh. And her father's name was in the book. And then I talked to her boss, and I was like, you should talk to her. Her dad, or her father-in-law, was involved and was named in this event. And he was like, oh, I was on the defense counsel for Milken. And I was like, what the heck? And he actually went in his closet and got out like a little tote bag that was from the Predators Ball. The year was going to be from the Predators Ball, because it didn't happen when Drexel Burnham Lambert went bankrupt. So that was pretty cool. Just like unexpected. Like, how do you plan for the people around you to actually be in a book you're reading about that's 30 years old? I have to say, this book is by Ben Stein, from of course Ferris Bueller's Day Off and When Ben Stein's Money and Clear Eyes commercials from years ago. And I actually reached out to Ben Stein to try to get him to do the intro, and I got a hold of his assistant, his point of contact, and he just didn't respond to it. Now, the assistant did, and she was like, if he hasn't replied, then he's probably not gonna do it. I really hoped he was going to. I'm really disappointed he didn't. I even kind of sent the little script, and I was like, it's gonna be 10 15 seconds, just the intro, and I'm talking about your book. It's good for you. It's about your book. It's an older book, but why not? And they never did. But I'll act it out. But I need to say that I'm pretty disappointed they didn't do it. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed the book. It's definitely focused on a different area than kind of the sexy stuff that past books have focused on in this area. But this is what I want to say. Hi, I'm Ben Stein. This is Book Time with Ryan. Today, Ryan's going to review my Anyone book called Anyone, A License to Steal. Wow. There, that's it. How long was that? That was probably less than 10 seconds. 15 seconds at the most. He wouldn't do it. He didn't say he wouldn't do it. And I'm not cheap. I went on Cameo to see if he's on there. And he was in the past. He's not on there now. You can't submit requests, but just a little disappointing. So, Ben, if you're watching this, you're probably not. I was disappointed that you didn't do that. But I enjoyed your book. And that's it. Thanks for being here today. Bye.
Congratulations for breaking my heart. Congratulations for tearing it all apart. Congratulations, you finally did succeed. Congratulations for leaving me in need. This morning I looked out my window and found a bluebird singing, but there was no one around. image of you going around in my head. Congratulations for bringing me down. Congratulations, now I'm sorrow bound. Congratulations, you got a good deal. Congratulations.